All right, hey, Stephen Hale here with the Nashville Banner, and I'm here with my colleague Araceli Crescencio to talk about. Can I just start over and do that again? I stumbled over that. Hey there, Stephen Hale here from the Banner. I'm here with my colleague Araceli Crescencio to talk about snow, ice, power outages, and all the things that have gone on this week. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Crazy cold week.
Yes. How are you doing at home? Did you lose power? Did you what's it gone on
I
for you?
am one of the very lucky ones. Didn't lose power at all this week, and so understand the frustration from so many others. But yeah, I was very fortunate. No power outages here.
Well, this is bad planning because I didn't lose power either, and I have survivor guilt about it. But now we have two of us on here who didn't lose power. But yeah, we have a strange. Yeah, and I'm hearing now. I'm in my ear. They're in my ear telling me that our two of our other colleagues who are in the room with us have also not lost power. So
what are the odds?
This is how conspiracies start. But yeah, I have a very strange kind of grid setup in my neighborhood. We live in Old Hickory Village, and everyone on our street is on one power grid. I guess I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but we're on the same part of the grid as the street behind us. So our whole street lost their power and we didn't. So we felt very bad, but we did end up, and this is the first year that we got a generator for the winter, anticipating this storm. We got it and we didn't end up having to use it. One of our neighbors used it, so that was good. But it was kind of strange to be one of the few people with power left.
I did hear you also opened your house for shelter.
Well, we did have some we did have some neighborhood friends over a couple times, and we also went to some of our friends' house as well. I think what you're referring to is I had a number of kids over to our house, and we showed them Sister Act 2, which is a great movie that everyone should watch.
Okay, confession. I have not ever watched that movie.
Wait, have you ever seen Sister Act 1
Absolutely
or 2?
Not.
Okay, do you know the premise?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
I did see the Slack message and I was like, oh, maybe I should check that out.
Okay.
So it's in the back of my brain
Well,
somewhere.
there's no judgment. This is great. And I'm really happy to be able to share it with you. Sister Act is a story of a woman played by Whoopi Goldberg who's like a lounge singer.
4 hours later.
And one of those teens is Lauryn Hill. The Lauryn Hill. And it's awesome. It's a great movie. 2 movies. I think they're both on Disney Plus.
This has got to be years old.
Oh, they're old. What, maybe 90s? Yeah, they're old. Now I'm wondering how old I was when I first saw Sister Act, because 92, I would have been 4.
I would have been negative something.
Right. So but I remember watching this movie very early on. So anyway,
Weekend activity.
Watch it. Yes, both 1 and 2. Great stuff. But yeah, so what about streets and roads and stuff around you? You've been out and about a lot, I know, because I've seen you some places and I've seen your posts and your reporting, but what are the roads like in your area?
Yeah, so maybe flashback to Monday, which was the first day that I made it out. I was picked up, 4-wheel drive, truck, made it through Dickerson Pike. But even as I was getting picked up, my coworkers were saying that I would have never made it out with just my own car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm off Dickerson Pike up in a subdivision that's pretty up a hill, and so that was very tough.
Yeah.
But after getting through that area on Dickerson Pike, primary road, so it was very clean. And so I think that's what I've noticed the most. All of those primary roads pretty easy to get through. It's those secondary routes where people live, neighborhoods where it's still very icy.
Yeah, and that was kind of our experience too. A lot of the main roads. Honestly, we didn't leave the first couple of days anyway, but a lot of the main roads seemed fine. But then you end up on some side road that no one has driven over and that they didn't do as much of the sort of prep work on, and it was bad. I was curious what your kind of experience growing up was weather-wise, because one thing that has been really interesting to me talking to neighbors and coworkers and friends and stuff is I have a neighbor who grew up in Boston, and he's walking around in shorts, he's unfazed by it. And then I grew up in Florida, so I didn't know how to deal with snow until my 8th winter here,
Yeah. I grew up in Nashville, so since age 10 I've been here, but for work I've lived in other states, so thankful for my 2 years in Michigan. That really prepped me for this
That's a whole
winter
other
storm.
level of winter.
Yeah, and so just like a lot of the things that you should know, like clearing your car fully, tips about your pipes, like those kind of things seemed like second nature to me. But for so many people, like that wasn't the case. Even carbon monoxide poisoning that we're seeing now.
Which I want to ask you about, because I know you're working on a story related to that, which has come up, unfortunately, because at the briefing we were at the other day, the police announced that the third storm-related death that they were looking into, they believe was due to carbon monoxide poisoning, and they talked about, how to be safe with generators. So what are you working on related to that?
Yeah, safety tips from experts. Tennessee Poison Center reports 101 cases since Thursday.
Wow.
And so that is a very big uptick in something that hasn't been seen in years. A lot of that related to people finding alternative heat sources, plugging in generators, grills. A lot of people we spoke with had propane mechanisms, trying to find ways to heat their home. And so just sharing what's safe, what isn't, and some health safety tips. So go check that out, NashvilleBanner.com.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I know the big one that, people have been talking about a lot is making sure you don't run your generator inside, or at least and not even close to your, a door or window of your house, because of that gas can just come inside.
Yeah, and recently, many people are starting their car in their garage. That's also been a very
Wow. Yeah.
big risk. That's kind of the patients that they're seeing now, is what I was told. A lot of people, even with their garage door open, they say it's not safe to stay in your car and try to get warm.
Yeah. So I know we were both together at a briefing yesterday with like the mayor and NES and other Metro officials. And there's actually a new NES briefing. We're taping this on Thursday. There's another NES briefing that's going to be happening here shortly. So some of these numbers will change. But just to kind of sum up for people, the power outages was a record for NES. It was like a little over 230,000 NES customers who lost power, which that is a measure of how many meters, lost power. So actual people, that's many times more than that, right? But so that was a record. And I think they said yesterday the most ice that we've gotten accumulating since the 1994 storm. But I wonder what, if anything, kind of stood out to you from that briefing we were at yesterday.
I think as a reporter, the amount of information covered at those briefings is a lot, because we get updates from so many departments. And so it just is kind of like an overview of what everybody is doing. And it seems like all hands are on deck, but still the whole city, so many people in the city are still suffering. So it just seems like lots of lessons to be learned from this storm, but definitely a first of what I've seen in Nashville. Never have seen so many people without power, so many folks helping. And so I think at the briefing, most of what was talked about was those NES power outages.
Right.
So that's something that jumped out at folks. And the frustration of folks who want a response in terms of when will power be restored, and NES saying that at that moment, as of Wednesday, they couldn't give a clear answer, because they're still working to maybe pinpoint exactly like how they're going to continue to restore this infrastructure.
Right. And it was very interesting, because Brent Baker from NES was there, and he has a very long title that I don't remember, but vice president and such and such and such and such. And he had the fortunate position of taking all these questions, which I think were all legitimate questions. I mean, people, if you are going into your fifth day without power, and it's just now gotten above freezing, that's a scary situation, and there's not a lot of clarity about what you should be able to expect. And one thing that I did think was interesting that they were, I think, trying to express or explain yesterday in response to some of those questions is the way that, kind of almost bizarrely, the more progress they make, the harder it gets to make more progress, because they start by doing the quote-unquote easier ones, or the bigger, the outages that will affect more people. They try to restore those. And then whether it's getting into kind of more rural parts of the county, or harder to reach kind of streets or power lines, or whatever the case is, it actually ends up taking longer. And so that made sense to me, but it is also totally understandable why that's a very frustrating fact if you're one of the nearly 100,000 people still without power. I mean, the other thing that is, I think, understandably frustrating to people, but does make a little sense upon kind of hearing them talk about it, was as they send out these updates, and if people are getting alerts on their phones or checking the NES map or whatever, sometimes for instance, the number of broken poles will like go up, and you're thinking, why are we going backwards? But it's just because they're finding more as they go out and around and like move a tree and then see that a power pole is down. And so it's all very maddening, I'm sure, both to people who are without power and to the people who are out there trying to restore it. But we should say, I mean, there was also a lot of pretty repeated questioning about this matter of whether NES turned away line workers. I'm curious what you made of all that.
That's definitely a clash that is worth talking about. Some people on social media, even people claiming to be linemen working for different union groups, saying that they were turned away from NES. So that was a big line of questioning that was raised yesterday. Obviously, they came out and said that that was all rumors and that there was a bit of misinformation. So that was interesting. And the response to that, how all of these union representatives were present at the conference as well, reading statements. And so I think that for many people, they want to point a finger or some maybe blame in a way that for now, I don't think we've seen the evidence to show that this was something that they could have foreseen.
Yeah, it seems that way to me. I mean, the question that I have is just how NES prepared for this storm, and we all knew a storm was coming. Obviously, you can't know how much is going to come, but I mean, some of these forecasts were saying more than a foot of snow or all this ice, so you knew it was going to be bad. And I guess the numbers they've given are that they had 200 line workers kind of on the ready when the storm hit, and then they started building up from there. And part of me wonders, well, why are you only trying to build up once the roads are covered in ice and everyone's out of power? On the other hand, what the NES representatives have said is that everyone in the region was also trying to reserve these crews. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's just to say I have more questions about what went into that because I genuinely don't know. And I'm sure there are challenges that I'm not aware of either. But I think that is what a lot of people are wondering is like, well, they say they're scaling up the workforce, but now the city is frozen. So like it seems like hard to do that at this point.
Yeah, I think yesterday they also mentioned we're about 900 linemen now.
Right.
And so it is interesting because they also mentioned that as they add more workers, that safety still needs to be a priority. And I'm not an expert in this, but I am curious as to how different it is to work in like a city compared to your surrounding Murfreesboro, Smyrna. Why just their power outage gets it seems to be resolved quicker.
Yeah, that's a really good point because they did say that we have to make sure these workers that we add on can do so safely, which makes sense, but I don't know all the specific details of what that means exactly.
I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this.
Yes, I don't think that's going away. You asked a question at the briefing about non-English speaking folks in the community who are calling some of these hotlines or phone numbers to get a ride to a warming shelter or to get a response to some issue they're having, and how it's been a challenge because there's not always a Spanish-speaking person there to answer their questions or help them get the resources that they need. When I was out with some folks from the Remix Way who were distributing food, when I was out there, and this is to your credit about a lot of the great work you do at Noticias, people were telling me that a lot of the either immigrant communities or specifically Spanish-speaking communities are not necessarily getting information from the Metro release that they put out. For one, if that's because it's in English or just because that's not where they're going to get their information, but that the people I was with who were trying to find people who needed food or who needed help, they were finding those people by seeing them in the comments on the Facebook Live of Noticias broadcast that you and others there have done about the weather, because that's where they're getting their information. So that was just cool to hear about you and the work you're doing. But also I wondered what you've seen when you've been out and talking to people that made you want to ask about that at the briefing. Yeah,
shout out Nashville Noticias.
Yes.
I think they do great work, especially during emergencies. But I wanted to ask that question because when I was out, I noticed that so many people in apartment complexes seem to be very, or I guess like one of the hardest hit areas because it's an apartment complex, you see it a little bit more apparently. It's like when you go deliver food, dozens and dozens of people that come out. And so many of those folks really couldn't even plug into a generator because they were in maybe the fourth, fifth building up. And so many of them had babies. They were just desperate trying to find transportation elsewhere. And so we kept pointing them to these warming centers for a long time, but we didn't know how to get them there, right? Could you come pick us up was the question that we got a lot. And obviously we couldn't do that. And so when the transportation line became available, it was a very incredible resource for me to be able to share with folks. And so when they would call, they would tell me that they're waiting a long time, that they only spoke English. So I would have to tell them to stay on the line, that ask for a translator. And I did hear from a handful of folks that called the line, got rides, and they only spoke Spanish. So to the credit of Metro, like there was people working there that could translate for folks.
I remember part of what their response to you yesterday was that they were working on getting more translators in, and both for the transportation line and for the non-emergency line at police department and all these different things that people might be calling while this is going on. One thing that this whole week has made me think of is this is like a very serious situation. We've had 3 people die in the city so far, which is awful, and a lot of people who are afraid for them or their families because of the situation. But at the same time, it's been a very funny week because it's like shut things down and the snow's in the street and kids are outside playing. It's like a very weird, unsettling kind of combination of things. I bring that up to say I'm wondering what your slip and fall count is since the storm started.
0, but very many close calls.
Okay, I've fallen only twice, which I was proud of until I heard that you were at 0. But both of my falls were within 10 minutes of each other, and they were in front of people. And I have the recorded audio of one of them. Yeah. Did you get that? So it's like a little embarrassing. And I was actually carrying a tray of food when I fell one time, but I did save the food, which was exciting for everyone around me.
I did have very, very close calls, so to your credit there.
Yes.
So carrying this plate of food, was that with
what happened? Yes. Thank you for asking. It was a tough time. So when I was out, I went out to tag along kind of with some of the folks from the Remix Way who were distributing food, and I was following them around and stuff, and they were getting some burritos. Acapulco Burrito had made 1,000 burritos for them to hand out, which is incredible. And especially because I later learned that the restaurant itself had only gotten power back earlier that day. This was Monday, I think. So just incredible stuff that they were doing. And so we're there, and I'm like, well, I'm here. Like, let me pick up one of these trays of burritos and like help you get it out of the car. I'm just sit here and watch you do it. It turned out it would have been better if I had just stayed out because I picked it up and went walking along all confidently, and I did fall while holding. But I basically gave up my body for the burritos. And there may be video of this somewhere. I don't have it, but it's possible that someone captured it. So yeah, it was good, and it's providing a little entertainment for the folks who were out in the parking lot and stuff. It was like it would have had that whoop, 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 sound effect behind it if someone had been watching. But
you can trust Steven with a tray of burritos.
That's right. I mean, yeah. Yeah, that was really something because they showed up there to hand out food, but like almost immediately we encountered some folks who were trying to get their cars out of a parking spot. So then the volunteers who were there start trying to help with that. It was just like, people are, and that's been the other super cool thing about this week or however long it's been now, is like as bad as it has been in some ways and as dangerous and all that, like I feel like so many people are being really good to each other. That's been a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah, I think in my history of Nashville, it kind of reminds me of the floods that occurred. I think that is when I most saw like Nashville coming together, and so it's reminiscent of that area where so many people were without shelter and needed food, and people stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I guess the weather's going to go away, but it's going to get cold again next week. We should have done this outside, I think, is what we should have actually done.
Maybe that would have given us
outside in the cold. We would have been quick and concise that way. But yeah, so People can check out your story. They can subscribe to the flyer. They can keep listening to this, and it is produced by Andrea Tudhope, who, have you fallen at all this week? She says she has not fallen, even once.
Queen.
Stay safe out there. We'll see you soon.